This is One on One. We are pleased to welcome Dr. Laura Balsamini, who is Director of Pharmacy Services at Summit Medical Group. Good to see you, Doctor.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Let's educate some folks. The opioid epidemic, overdose crisis, describe it.
So we're in the midst of, just as you said, an opioid crisis where, sadly, we saw 33,000 patient lives lost in 2015, whereby patients have been overdosing not only on prescription opioids, but subsequently fentanyl and heroin. But of those 33,000, over half of them were lost to prescription opioids.
Why do you say subsequently? Is there what's the movement from, all right, I've got this prescription for, I'm not even going to name, some painkiller, I hurt my knee, get a pain medication, opioid, but it gets cut off at a certain point, as it should, right?
Sure.
What happens?
So because they have so much addiction involved with opioids, what happens is patients who have already got an inherent propensity for addiction continue to need more and more or want more and more. And when that prescribing, because it's a gateway drug, we call it, and once the prescribing of those opioids may cease, because technically the patient should be doing better, the injury or the post-surgery should have improved, they may need something more. And if they're not necessarily getting an opioid, they may start looking for something else. And sadly, they may turn to illicit medicate drugs like heroin.
Doctor, you know, the law that changed in the state.
Yes.
It now, help us on this, a couple of pieces of it. One, it limits the number of, I'm not sure if it's 5 or what it is, 5 pills.
So it's 5 days supply. So
5 day, I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
5 day supply.
It's actually one of the strictest laws that were passed in New Jersey, across the country, in our state, just right here.
That's a good thing.
It is, because the crisis, as I just mentioned, how many people's lives have been lost. We really need to do something to put a stop to it. And part of that is the law is one component of it, whereby, just as you just said, that first opioid prescription, if the patient hasn't had an opioid in the previous 12-month window, is limited to a 5-day supply. This was stricter than even what Massachusetts or New York passed, which was 7 days. And was really surprising was that this law did not allow for an exemption for example, post-surgical opioid prescriptions.
That's different, there's an exception. But there are other pieces to this initiative. Doesn't it talk about, the patient being, I don't want to say warned, but given valuable information about some of the dangers,
Sure,
right?
yes. So besides the fact that there's the day supply limit, the provider also has to look at the New Jersey Prescription Monitoring Program database. That's a requirement of the law now before prescribing. They also have to provide the patient with information, have discussions on the risks and the side effects of opioids.
What about coverage? Is there anything different about coverage in terms of what insurance companies need to do regarding treatment?
So we're starting to see, for example, CVS Caremark was one company that just recently announced that they would be limiting the amount of coverage that they will pay for if you have that particular prescription plan, that they'll pay.
For in-treatment?
Well, no, I'm specific, no, this, talking about prescription.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The prescription coverage,
Talk about the treatment part,
but the
if there's an
treatment
issue.
Part, yeah, so also the law now has...
I shouldn't jump to that, I'm sorry.
No. Well, there's so many different components of insurance coverage, but specifically...
You're saying insurance is complicated? Hadn't heard that, but go ahead.
You need to have a degree just in that to get through it. Yeah, so in terms of inpatient coverage now, there's been an expansion under the law that will provide additional resources for patients that are suffering from addiction and get them the necessary help they need.
Can we talk about the whole thing about our expectations, right? You go in, you got the chart, the smiley face, the sad face, you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
1 to 10.
Right.
Describe your pain level. I'm like, okay, how do I do this? Where's the number? Okay. Mm-hmm. But there are expectations for what, the medical community, these drugs could and should do for me. And also, we'll talk about managing expectations.
Exactly.
Make it go away.
That you hit the nail on the head, because one of the things I've been educating our physicians on is the importance of taking the time to have that discussion with the patient on managing expectations.
What's that conversation sound like with a doctor and a patient? Talk to me.
So, Steve?
Yeah, I just hurt my knee. Doc, I need as many of these painkillers as you can give me.
Okay, so we would assess with the level, as you just said, in what range is it? Where's the source of pain coming from? Is it neurological? Is it inflammatory? I would have that discussion with you. Well, Steve, this is actually more inflammatory in nature. As you said, your knee, this isn't so much neurological. We should look at other alternatives rather than necessarily jumping
You can't just
to an
give me the
opioid.
big painkiller?
There's several risks and side effects with these drugs. If you want to know the whole list, are you ready for them? I'm glad you're sitting.
Really?
Yes.
A lot of risks?
Yes.
It's just not going to
Yes.
get my knee better?
Physical dependence, tolerance, you're just going to need more and more of them. Constipation, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, sleepiness.
Wow.
Yeah, those are not side
Are you also
effects.
educating others in the medical community about this as well?
Yes.
How are you doing that at Summit?
So at Summit Medical Group, we have large physician forum meetings. So basically presenting to our physicians, just as I mentioned to you, the key critical points to cover in a patient visit. That would be meet the compliance of the law for that patient counseling component, and tips and tricks. So, for example, as I just mentioned to you, assessing, is it neurologic? Is it inflammatory?
It matters where it's coming from.
Yes, it does. What are the options, or what are the alternative treatments? Not necessarily just an opioid. Perhaps we should be looking, as I said, at nonsteroidals, physical therapy, exercise, non-opioid medications as well, besides nonsteroidals. Yeah,
And we
the
need to look
alternatives.
more at alternatives when, in
Yes.
fact, they're appropriate. By the way, we're not in any way advocating one thing or another, because sometimes a particular prescription is the most appropriate once all the options are considered.
I mean, individualized therapy. But again, just keeping in mind from the very beginning that opioids may not necessarily always be the answer, and because they have so many risks associated with them.
And
Respiratory
finally,
depression and death and overdose. It's terrible.
and before I let you go, this is a national crisis, is it not?
Yes, it is. It's not just in
It's
New
not
Jersey.
overstating it.
No, 80% of the opioid consumption in the world is right here in the United States.
And New Jersey is in some ways hit even harder
Yes,
for a whole range of reasons.
sure. It is.
Dr. Elmer, thank you. We appreciate you. I know there's more to talk about. We'll have you back. But you had just educated and helped an awful lot of folks in a short period of time.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Okay, stay with us. We'll be right back right after this. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, Valley National Bank, Rowan University, Suez, Community Food Bank of New Jersey, New Jersey Sharing Network, and by Fedway Associates. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with TriStar Studios.